So on some web applications, you might have the need to create some type of exclusive lock on a resource. One good example is when you're picking a seat on a plane. Often you'll claim that seat and they'll put a lock on that seat for up to like 5 or 10 minutes, just so that you have a chance to kind of go through the UI and actually purchase it, right? From the time that you want to claim the seat to the time that you finish filling out the form with your credit card information and pressing that buy button, you want to give that user some type of grace so that, hey, if someone else were to come by and grab those seats before you and enter in that information faster, maybe that's not fair, right? So depending on your use cases, I've seen this done with cruise ships. You're trying to book a cabin. Usually they'll let you reserve a cabin for like X amount of hours, so that if you're actually serious, you can come back and pay for it. If not, that lock is going to get relinquished and other people can start using it. So how exactly does that actually work in a system, right? So you'll have a user who wants to come through and they're going to go ahead and say, hey, you know what? I want to claim that cruise cabin. So let's just go ahead and say user claims cabin. Okay. And this will hit your API, and your API will probably talk to like a database or something. Let's just go ahead and put a database here. And how you could potentially implement a lock is the first thing you need to do is check, does a lock already exist on this resource? In our case, let's pretend that we have like a reservation model. And just using some pseudocode and TypeScript, let's just add a type here. And this thing could point to a cabin, right? So we'll have like a number, like a cabin ID or something. And when a user tries to claim a cabin, what you're basically going to do is you're going to look up to see, hey, does a reservation already exist on that cabin? So I'm going to go ahead and say check if reservation already exists. And if there is no reservation on that cabin or your airplane seat, you're going to go ahead and add one in. Just go ahead and put a 3 here, and I'll say if not, create reservation for cabin and user ID. Or if you're using like cookie sessions or something like that, somehow you need to kind of track, you know, this user is going to reserve this cabin. Now, the second thing you're going to have to do is probably on the model, you need to say like expires at, and this could be some type of date timestamp, you know, 5 minutes in the future, 10 minutes in the future, and this will come into play later on, right? So we've created the reservation, we've told it when it's going to expire, and now let's say, you know, 2 minutes later, someone else is like, oh, you know, I really want to go on a cruise, I want to book that same cabin. They're going to go ahead and make a request to your API. They're going to say, you know what, I want cabin 2, okay? I'll just go ahead and say user claims cabin 2 up here, so this makes sense. And then later on, let's say 2 minutes after user A claims cabin 2. I'm all over the place in this video, so let me just go ahead and say user 1 here, say user 2 here. Hopefully this makes sense. So about 2 minutes after this user claims cabin 2, this one makes a request and says, hey, you know what, I want to claim that cabin as well. And I'm going to go ahead and put a 4 here, right? So this is step 4. So this user is trying to claim the same cabin. We're going to go ahead and do another request to the database and check if that exists already. Check if reservation exists. And if it does exist, you probably want to like throw an error and say, hey, someone else already claimed this cabin. You cannot use it right now. So I should also say, like, checking if the reservation exists is not enough. You need to check if the reservation exists and it's not expired, right? So remember that expires at that we kind of added right here. We want to check both of those. So if it does exist, but it's expired, you can go ahead and delete the existing reservation and you can put your name on it. What we might also need is a user ID here, or like a session token, something like that. So we can track, you know, who has claims to this reservation cabin at the time. All right, so that's step 5. And let's say, you know, this user will get an error back saying, hey, you know, someone else has already claimed that cabin. So what user 1 has to do is they need to finish their entire payment process. All right, now somewhere down the line, the user 1 is going to have to either pay for that cabin or it's going to have to just like not do anything with it. But let's say in the scenario that the user 1 pays for the cabin, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and update the database and we're going to mark that reservation as like completed. But more specifically, there is probably a cabin model down here. I'll just go ahead and change this to cabin, and I'll say like purchased. I'll just say purchased by, and this could be like a user ID, something like that. Okay, so if the user actually, you know, pulls out his credit card, types it into the form, clicks pay, maybe Stripe accepts that payment, your Stripe webhook is basically going to come in here and say, you know what, this user actually successfully purchased that cabin. Let's just go ahead and mark it to say, hey, this has been purchased. And now you basically have created some type of exclusive lock / reservation system for people who want to put claims on cabins. And that's kind of an overview of how you can do some type of exclusive lock in terms of like a reservation system for, picking out a hotel room or picking out a airplane seat or a cabin on a cruise ship. But this same thing can be applied to basically anything. Let's say you had an application where multiple users had access to the same Word document, but you didn't want people clobbering each other's rights. Okay, now there's ways you can do this with like database mutations and conflict resolution, but one of the least sophisticated ways to achieve this is by just putting a lock on the document and just refreshing the lock every so often if the user is still typing into their Word document. And this will prevent other people from coming in and modifying the Word document and potentially overriding all of the work that you just did. Now, there's more nuances to like locking resources in your database. There's like exclusive locks. There's like optimistic locks, pessimistic locks. But I just wanted to kind of talk about some of these things just to kind of enlighten you all if maybe you haven't seen this type of scenario before. It's kind of cool to think about it, like how do all these reservation systems kind of work. Yeah, but let me know if you guys like this video, give me a thumbs up. Secondly, leave a comment if building out a reservation system or doing some type of exclusive locks in your web applications is something that you've done. I'm curious about your experiences and how it may or may not relate to what I kind of just showed in this diagram. For example, I know there's a huge issue with Ticketmaster a while back. Maybe one of you viewers work at Ticketmaster and you were responsible for the big fiasco that happened when Taylor Swift had a tour and all of her tickets basically crashed Ticketmaster. It's definitely not an easy problem, right? Creating a reservation system and buying tickets it's not an easy problem when a lot of traffic comes in. Yeah, other than that, I have a Discord channel you guys are welcome to join if you want to find a place to hang out or talk to other developers. Like always, have a good day and happy coding.